You employed several veterans on this film, right? I would be remiss to not mention that.
Yeah, so it's really really important for me just generally because well, one, I love to work with veterans just because like we have such a similar mentality. We're gonna get the job done, smart, good head on the shoulders, like, and that I can just generally say that across the board. And so we employed on our movie over 50 veterans in front and behind of the camera, and so they are just an integral part of who we are as a company and creatives. And it's really just important for me not to just do it, not to just like talk the talk, but to actually walk the walk and hire folks and be able to develop talent underneath us for both in front of and behind the camera. And so it's really important for every project, not just this one, for me to hire as many veterans as I can.
Yeah, I love it. For those that aren't connected to VME, that want to get into the industry or are in the industry, get connected with VME and get on board some of these projects. Is that much of it? That's not much of a change for you, right?
My name is Kerry Kite. I used to load bombs in the Air Force, and now I'm a writer, a filmmaker, and an entrepreneur. Through using the post 9/11 GI Bill to go to college, working hourly jobs to pay the bills, and freelancing my way into a career, I've studied what it takes to successfully transition from service to civilian, and that study has become a conversation. On this podcast, I speak to other veterans, successful artists and entrepreneurs about their transition, what they did well, where they failed, what they learned, and most importantly, how they applied their skills. Episode 159 features Ryan Curtis, an Army veteran, filmmaker, and the writer, director, and producer of Hollywood Grit. Welcome. This is Veteran Made. Our merch store is live at store.veteranmadeproductions.com. Grab hats, t-shirts, and hoodies in both performance and tri-blend cotton fabrics. Use code VM-5OFF for 5% off your purchase. Veteran Made is also sponsored by GoPills, a military-grade nootropic that contributes to brain health over time. Use code VM15 at checkout for 15% off. I get my collagen protein from Bubs Naturals, where you can use code VETERANMADE, all one word, at checkout for 20% off your order. We're also proud to partner with True Made Foods, which makes condiments free from added sugar and sweetened with real foods. Use code VET at checkout for 15% off. We love socks in this house. I get my wife new socks every Christmas. More importantly, we love American grown and made socks. Use code VETERANMADE15 at rucksocks.com for 15% off. And lastly, I end my day with Rack Out from Bravo Actual to maintain quality sleep, resulting in a well-rested body and mind. Use code VETERANMADE with a space between the words at checkout for 15% off your order. Enjoy the episode.
All right. Good afternoon. Just barely from the great state of Ohio for me. Good morning from the great state of California, my OG home state. Ryan Curtis, welcome to Veteran Made.
What's up, man? Glad to be here.
Yeah, man, glad to have you. We have a few mutual friends in common. Mark Harper is the one who finally put us in touch. I'm glad that he did. And we had a good conversation offline. Excited to dive into to you and your story, talk about your new film. I'm sure this won't be the last time that we chat or record an episode. So I want to cover the film. But before we do that, would love to dive into kind of a brief background on you and your service, kind of where and when you served. And then we'll jump into your transition into the entertainment industry.
Yeah, so I grew up just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. I was like a pretty typical neighborhood type town, Clinton and Lancaster, Massachusetts. There wasn't a whole lot happening out there except for some sports and family, and just really grinded it out in a poor working class town. So athletics kind of brought me out of the town and into college. I played basketball at a small school outside there at Fitchburg State University. And then while I was in college, I decided on a whim to join the Army. I was literally walking by an ASVAB test room and they were like, you should take this. And I was like, walked in, took the test. And so after the test, I was getting heavily recruited by all the branches. My dad had spent some time in the Army, and my grandparents on both sides have spent some time in the military. And so I was like, okay, this could be a thing, but it was literally never on my radar before that. And so I just kind of pushed away the recruiters. I wasn't really too interested. And finally, one of the Army recruiters was just like, you can do whatever you want here. This will be fun for you. What is there anything that would interest you in a way that would get you to just to jump in on board? And there was literally an Apache helicopter poster behind him. And I said, "Can I fly that?" And he goes, Of course you can. Just got to sign up and get ready to roll." And so I signed up with the intent to do the ROTC flight program to fly helicopters while I was in college and kind of do the part-time thing. And I signed on the dotted line August 29th, 2001. And so 12 days before 9/11. Because I hadn't done any training and I hadn't actually like gone to duty station or anything like that, the moment 9/11 happened pretty much changed my life. And so I got stop lossed into another unit, and then ended up being an engineer in the Army and then the reserves. And I did 01 to 09 in the Army.
I don't want to spend too much time on time in service because this show, we focus primarily on kind of what we're doing now, and how those skills and experiences equip us for what we're doing now in the creative and entrepreneurial space. But every time a 9/11 story like yours comes along, I want to dive in a little bit to it. How did that affect? You obviously went on to do 8 years, so it's not like you were pissed off and kind of got out right at 4. So I'm guessing that you did at least partially enjoy your time in service. But anytime we have something cool like that taken away from us, for me, it was getting injured at the end of selection and getting knocked out of the pipeline and not being able to go serve in a soft capacity and going to load bombs on fighter jets, which thankfully turned out to be pretty fucking cool. But at the time it was really difficult for me to be like, I didn't sign up to do this. I signed up to do something else. And now Big Air Force is putting me here. So what was that experience like for you kind of initially, and how did it inform the way that you approached that 8 years? And then why'd you get out at 8, right? Because it's like, sometimes it's like kind of 4 or 20, right? For those of us that are like about our age. But 8's kind of that number where you kind of get there and you're like, kind of decision time.
Yeah, I mean, 8 is like the total including my IRR. So it was actually like, so I really did a 6-year contract and then about a year and a half of IRR, so 6.5 years. And I did about 3.5, 4 of active duty. And then, so it really was like, basically, I got stop loss into a unit that I didn't intend to be in, and I ended up being an engineer. Wasn't my initial choice, but it ultimately, I did the invasion of Iraq in 2003. And I did some stuff in Africa shortly after, and then some stuff in Europe as well. And so, like, I ultimately it's one of the things that I'm most proud of. But it profoundly changed my life and what I thought I was doing, because 9/11 happened, and like it was just like it didn't matter anymore. Like, we were under attack, we suffered attack, as I'm sure you had the same experience. But for me, I was literally sitting in English class in like English 101 or something in college, and while the first tower was going down, and because we were outside of Boston where the planes originated from, all of like the public spaces, including universities, were under a very high threat warning. And so we got evacuated, thinking that there was a potential of attack to any like public spaces. And so after the moment the first tower fell, we were evacuated. Like, someone came in, security, another teacher, she was literally crying and screaming at the top of her lungs and being like, "We have to go. Everybody has to go out. We're under attack." And so from that moment there, for me, it was like, oh shit, this is real now. And, I didn't know what that would mean for me, but luckily, we ended up, I was a part of this, thing that was like the reaction to what happened in 9/11. And because of that, I'm so grateful. And what we ended up doing, it was the best experience that I could have ever imagined. That being said, the op tempo was kind of ridiculous. And, especially during that time from 01 to 09, I mean, that was pretty much the thick of it. And, it's just like, I didn't feel like that was a career option for me, because I felt like I had bigger and better things to move on to really use my capacity as now a leader, and my creative capacity, my brain, all of these different things that I really wanted to like kind of see where I could get to. And so that's kind of why I transitioned out.
Yeah, it's an interesting. So I was 2006 to 2010. So you're a little bit older than me. I was in art class in 8th grade when 9/11 happened, and so I'm of that generation where I was like 13 years old. And so I growing up in the 90s and just into 2000. I mean, I have like pretty vivid memories of that, just more like culturally, pop culture wise, right? Like movies and cartoons and like, all of those things. But I sort of have this memory of what life was like pre 9/11 a little bit. But I was of that age where I don't really think, I don't really think of I've grown up in a post 9/11 world, right? Even though
Yeah.
I technically didn't, right? It's
Yeah.
like,
You came of age then, Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So that age for me is a little bit different. Whereas you were in college, you have more memories of the pre 9/11 world. And for me, it's like I went through high school and watched everything on the news, and then we watched Oliver Stone's film, and you watched those original Generation Kill and all those things that kind of came out when I was in high school. And it was the early sort of obviously the journalistic and kind of news media response, but then the cultural and entertainment response to those things was so formative for me. And then you also mentioned something else interesting. That's like the op tempo. It's funny because not funny. It's interesting because there are so many people that did serve a full career, unlike you and I did, and that op tempo became something really difficult for them because as they look back on 20 years of sustained combat operations, whether in a support role or a direct role or a special operations role or whatever, like that is a lot to have over a large chunk of your life. For us, going through 4-ish years of a high op tempo actually was just super fun, right? Because we got to like go get in, do the fun things, do the interesting things, do the hard things, do the meaningful things, and then kind of get out and move on. So this GWAT generation is an interesting combination of those guys and gals that have the fatigue of that, and then there's the yous and me's of the world who were like, I went in and I did some cool shit, and then I got out and kind of moved on to some other things, and then experienced it as a veteran rather than as a service member.
Yeah. Yeah. It really also depends on like kind of where you were and where you served too, like especially over the long period of time. Like I have a friend of mine who just retired in February. And he, was like one of the baddest dudes on the planet, right? And he was, command sergeant major, and ended up was CSM of one of the cavalry in the second ID, one of their divisions. I forget the exact thing, but he just, his world is like so much different than ours, who only served, like that 4 to 6 or whatever, 4 to 8 years. And and it's really just so impressive for those guys that were able to kind of do it and hold out, and especially any of the guys in the soft units that like literally have 5, 6, 7 years of deployments under their belt over a 20-year career, which is just insane. So yeah, I'm really grateful for what I did. I am so happy to have that experience. And there's still a part of me, I'm sure for you too, there was still a part of me. It was like, well, what if I stayed? What would have happened? What could have I done? What's the route? I know the route that I think I would have gone, but who knows? But there's always that in the little back of my head. And I think that's probably the case for any military dude that really kind of like, went in with a dream on the military side. But it's one of the biggest things that influenced my life, and had such a profound effect on everything that came after that. And I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And that itch is still there, but over time, it's gotten kind of lighter and lighter, especially as we get into our careers now and find meaning and purpose and interest in the things that we're doing now. But I'll never forget, right when I got out in 2010, it was my unit that went and dropped the bombs on Libya. Regardless of how you feel about that politically, it was really difficult for me. I literally, I got out and left, and I went home, and then all of my friends were doing our job, not in a training capacity, but in a way that like actually mattered.
Yeah.
That first one was like, man, I'm going to miss that, right? Because like I deployed to Bagram twice and we did NATO stuff all over Europe, and the op tempo was super high and it was really fun and really meaningful and provided so many great experiences. And then you get out and you're like, you don't do that anymore. And I was so excited to get out and so excited to go to film school and so excited to pursue my dreams. But then I had that pull, thought about contract, thought about all the things that people think about. And now that I've hosted this podcast for as long as I have, and I talked to all the guys that went contracted, and they're like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm actually glad I didn't do that. I'm glad I jumped headfirst into this and kind of moved through the career that way. So on that note for you, you played sports in college. My guess is you were an engineering major or a STEM major of some sort to be an engineer in the Army.
I was a straight, just like communications major in college. I thought what I thought I was going to do was do broadcast journalism, specifically geared towards sports journalism. So like I wanted to like kind of heading towards that ESPN anchor type thing was where I thought I was going. And so I actually in college, I majored in communications with a focus in broadcast, and then I minored in theater, right? And so. But I didn't really that was that first, section when I went to college. I got pulled out of school to do the invasion. So I ended up doing 1 year there, my first college. And then as I, got back from my first deployment, I went re-enrolled and just continued to chip away at college as I served. But, it was straight fluke. It was just that they needed me in this spot, and that's where I went.
Gotta love the DoD. Here you go. Communications major, theater minor. Go be an engineer. So when did the shift, the interest from the broadcast journalism side of things into more of entertainment and content and branded and narrative and kind of the track that you've been on? Like, what was the genesis of you saying, I'm going to jump in and do this?
Yeah, for me, it was like I have to kind of like reframe from earlier when I was growing up, because for me, like I grew up in a very just like huge family that completely loved each other, and that my family wasn't just like my brothers and sisters. My grandparents had 12 kids, and I have like 87 first cousins and all this stuff. And I pretty much lived with my grandmother on and off for most of my childhood. And so there was always just kids and people and everything around. And, but we were like, pretty low income. And so there wasn't a lot of money, or there wasn't like the teaching of the way we grew up. Weren't told that you can kind of do whatever you want. It was like, here's your path. You're either going to be, work in construction, maybe, get into the medical field if you're smart, and then more than likely be some type of small time petty criminal, and so
you grew up in a Ben Affleck movie.
I literally
Town, or one of those, right? Yeah,
literally, that's just exactly how I grew up and the way it was, and that's true. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I was brought home in a police cruiser, not because of something I did, because someone in my family did something stupid, or we running from the cops, or stole some things from Sears or whatever, some just dumb stuff. And so, in my head, like my trying to get out was like sports was the only way I was going to get out of there. And so I didn't really think about career wise, but what I did is I loved movies. Like my escape when I was a kid was movies. That was my window to the outside world, And so I just like fell in love and just romanticized these worlds that were in film specifically. And so, and then I was in high school, we used to like make our own little movies, and I didn't know it at the time, but we'd take like these old VHS like tape cameras and make the just stupid little short films. And we'd edit them in camera, and then we'd get like people from high school to watch them, and everybody'd laugh and be like, and what I didn't realize was I was directing at the time, and I was shooting it, and I'd tell everybody what to do. I'd be like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this and this and this and do it. And so I was directing way before I realized what a director was and what that was. And then when I went to college, I was like, oh, the only thing that kind of interests me is sports. So like, let's find something in sports world. And then the military happened, and but as I grew up, I was always like a performer. I was always like, wanting to tell stories and do whatever that meant. And then as the military happened, that kind of light that you have as a child, as you like are growing up, these pure innocence and like the wants and the desires, like that thing is kind of dimmed down a little bit in the military, because for the greater good, you need to be doing this, you need to fit in this box, and you do that. And I was very good. I was great in the military, and I enjoyed that aspects of it too. But as I transitioned out of the military, I didn't realize that I still had this itch of like storytelling. And so quickly, as when I got out, I like couldn't figure out, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I always kept being like pulled to this entertainment space, this movie space. And so I had some friends that lived in Las Vegas. They were still in college and doing their thing. And so they're like, you should come out here. We have a house and you can rent a room. And so I just like headed to Vegas and moved out there. And one of the first things I did is pulled out a newspaper, and I saw an ad for extras, casting, and acting classes. And I was like, "Ooh, that looks interesting. I'll make $50 to go and stand there." And so I went there, and then that led to a lot of acting classes, which then led me to like trying to like get on little terrible projects. And as I got on these projects, I was like, this is horrible. Like these people that have just like didn't have a clear idea of what they wanted to do. And I was like, I think I can do this. And so I started just learning and teaching myself about just basics of acting and production. I kept just volunteering to be on sets and whatever in Vegas. At the time, I started just like kind of like having ideas and writing and jotting them down. And my cousin, he worked in advertising. He had a buddy of his who worked at Spike Television. I don't know if you remember Spike TV. Yeah. And he was like, yeah. And so my cousin, he didn't know that I was like dabbling in the acting and doing some filmmaking stuff. And he was like, hey, my buddy's looking for show ideas at Spike TV. You got any ideas? And I was like, of course I do. He's like, well, if you got some ideas, send them my way. And I was like, well, what are they looking for? They look scripts or blah, blah, blah. And so I literally wrote a script that I didn't even teach myself properly how to write, really. And wrote a script of a TV show that was basically like Entourage in Las Vegas, but with poker players.
Oh, cool.
And I sent it to them, and they essentially said, we can clearly tell you're not really a writer and you have no idea what you're doing, but this is actually kind of good. And the reaction that I got from them made me reevaluate and be like, maybe I could actually do this. And sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, a couple of things there I want to underscore, and I want you to double tap on it and dive a little deeper. One, just getting into the environment, period, regardless of, it's very easy as film fans, right? Especially watching movies like you did growing up, like I did growing up. A mistake I made early in Los Angeles and New York was not getting onto bad sets, because I had such what I viewed as a kind of high quality view, or a high sensitivity to high quality, cinematic product, like whatever, right? Use the douchiest word you can imagine. Like that's how arrogant I was and like how I thought. And I look back and I hear you talk about it. It's like, I wish I would have just gotten onto bad sets, because you learn so much by doing, even if you're doing it poorly. And even if other people are doing it poorly, the risk is so low. And you do get that sort of negative reference point for, oh, okay, they don't know what they're doing. I don't really know what I'm doing either, but I'm starting to get a better idea of what to do. What is that? What your experience was?
Yeah, 100%. And at the same time too, is like you having come out of the military at the time, I was still young. I was in my 20s while this was happening, but all these other people were also relatively the same age. But I was so far ahead of them, like mentally, emotionally, and as a fully formed human, because of my experiences in the military. I might not have had the skill set of the filmmaking and the actual doing of the stuff yet, but that came quickly because I was able to kind of differentiate and separate myself because of my experiences and because of my maturity at the time. And so, yeah, I got on a lot of sets and quickly realized nobody knows what they're doing, especially when you're in your 20s, right? And I got to pick and choose of like, whoa, this is good, but that's not. Um, and one of the things that you kind of what I realized quickly is that you have to develop your own taste, and your taste isn't going to be good early. You still have to like work that out and really kind of build on what your taste is, and then it's all about developing that taste and then catching your skill set up to your taste, which is the hardest thing, right? So but yes, a lot of go ahead.
No, finish your thought. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was like, it's a lot of just really bad, I mean, terrible productions and sets, and especially because it's not LA or New York, right? At the time I was in Vegas, which is like, I love Vegas, don't get me wrong, and there are some good and talented people there, but the skill sets and the abilities generally across the board are not nearly what they are in Los Angeles specifically, right? So,
You talk about developing taste, right? It's like back to the example that I use, like taste. You can't actually just have taste. It's why like I did 1 year of film school at Ohio State here in Columbus. It was a film studies program. Like you can't develop taste with an eye as a critic only. You have to
right.
develop taste in it. You have to understand it. You have to experience it. You have to fail. You have to try things. You have to try things that are a genre you think you don't like, but like go understand what it takes to make, an ultra low budget B horror film, right? Even if that's not your thing, because, that's actually really hard to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
that taste that we develop, that we think we have as a film fan or as a cinephile or whatever, like isn't real taste. The taste that we develop while we do the actual work with people who are also struggling and kind of bumbling their way forward, that's where we like really develop a true taste and understanding for what we like, what we can do,
Yep.
and what we can't. Right.
Right. Yeah. And that is truly the most important, especially as like a director, right? Because you are in charge. You are the arbiter of taste in the things that you're doing. You are setting the bar. You're setting expectations, and everything that you do has to match up to exactly what your taste level is. And really, that's where the talent comes in. Is getting a good taste that you can achieve, and then getting your crew and everyone below you to achieve that taste, and being able to do that. And so, that takes a long, long time, and it took me, longer than I wanted for sure. But it's part of the journey, because you just have to try and fail and do it over and over and over again until you're good.
Yeah, and I would imagine like that's where your leadership experiences in the military would be so helpful. Like I love the way that Christopher Nolan talks about it when he's like, I am not good at any of the things that I hire people to do on my sets. I am the director, which means I'm good at telling somebody who's really good at what they do what I like or don't like about what they do. Right.
Yeah.
Everything from costume to set to acting, to camera team, genie, like all that stuff. Right. Like he said, like, I'm not good at any of this, but I hire the best people and then I tell them what's good and what's not, which takes a certain kind of, confidence, right, and a certain size of ego, and not a big ego, but more of like the strength of it to say like, no, I'm confident in what I believe this vision is, and confident enough to talk to another competent professional to get there.
Yeah. Like I don't know his specific story. I think for the most part, he like, pretty much, only directed. He also shot, I think, his early stuff as a cinematographer.
Following, yeah, but like that was it.
But like, yeah, for me, my thing was not. I got on sets and I did I became a PA. I worked in the G&E department multiple times. I worked in the camera department. I worked on I did crafty. I worked in production. I worked in costuming. I literally did all of these things because I would get on in any capacity I could. And I learned a base level of skills for all of those things. And I think one of my strengths, not only from the military side, is like that I can literally have conversations with anyone on the crew, knowing how to do the thing. They're much better than I am, but I can actually convey what I want to do. And so that's really, really has helped me, in all of these things. And then to like, jump on what Nolan does is like, eventually I realized I can't do it by myself. And the key, another skill set, is to be able to find those people that you work well with that are better and smarter than you in that specific thing, right? And so one of my early like attachments of people was like, I found a cinematographer that I still work to this day, Jay Visit. He just did this movie Hollywood Grit, and he's like one of the most talented cinematographers that I've ever met. His eye and his work ethic, everything about him is just, the top that you can ever imagine. He is on a journey to be one of the top cinematographers in the world. I just know that to be the case. And we found each other early, and we're able to level each other up. We both push each other, and then so really it's about finding those team members really and being able to collect them and then do it together. That's what I like to do, actually. So
yeah, I love that. You talk about being a PA in all of the different departments. I came up in the AD department, and what I loved about that was getting to work with and understand every other department, right? As a second, right? You're working with hair and makeup, wardrobe, and talent. As a first, you're working with camera, G&E, and set, director, writer, producer, all these things. And so working in that department for me gave me that, not that like quite, sometimes it felt like a bird's eye view of the production, but most of the time it was that boots on the ground, lateral understanding of, okay, this is how this department works. This is how this department works. This is how this department works. How do we strategically map that to move a production forward? And then sitting next to a director and understanding how that director, who maybe had the same kind of journey that you did, PAing in all these departments, how do they pull it all together and then execute on the vision and work with all of those departments, right, to do what needs to be done. I love that framework. I want to talk about the film. We've got like 25 minutes left. I know you're stacked for press for the film. I'll have you back and we can talk more about your journey kind of through the industry at large. I know you did a lot of work with a lot of different people, but let's kind of fast forward through some of that and we can talk at a later date and break it down. But for now, let's talk about the film, your journey as a director, and how you got to this, writing and directing, a distributed film, right, with a legit cat. Like the whole thing is great. So tell us about it and tell us about how you brought it together.
Yeah, so the film is called Hollywood Grit. It is the story of a Hollywood jazz club, a neo-noir film that like really harkens back to like the old school noirs of the 40s and 50s. But we modernize it and do a fun little tone twist and bring it really to the future. It's a story of a singer at this jazz club and her like dirtbag father, who's a former detective, has to come and find her. And, it's nothing like that's groundbreaking as far as story structure, but how we tried to change it and do it and make it unique was just with the characters, the tone, and doing something that hasn't been done in a very long time, but modernizing it. And so it's something that I'm the most proud of that I've ever done outside of the military. And it's something that is definitely by far the most difficult thing I've ever done outside of the military too. And so, getting here has been a scratching and clawing journey for 10 plus years, more than 15 years now, really. So basically like the elevator version of how that happened is like I moved to Los Angeles in 2010, not knowing what I wanted to do. And then, just started getting all that experience, like we talked about, different roles and on sets, but eventually started just making my own stuff. And making my own stuff turned into doing some commercials as a director, which led to more commercials as a director, and really starting to refine and build my skill set all the while I was writing. And so I did a lot of commercials and a lot of scripts that I would just continually write and get better as a writer and get better as a director. And eventually I got to the point that, people were noticing me and noticing kind of my abilities and what I could do. And so I was starting to like really start pushing hard on getting a film made. And it took a very long time to do, but this movie, I had actually, COVID really put the brakes on a lot of things. Like, so I would probably, had COVID not happened, I probably would have done a movie maybe 5 years ago. But COVID happened, but that might have been one of the best things to happen, because what COVID did was it made me, literally hunker down and just write. And I wrote so many scripts during COVID, and then my skill set of writing just really took a big leap forward during COVID. And so after COVID happened, started pitching scripts and pitching things. I ended up getting attached to do a movie, a horror film that we were supposed to shoot on the East Coast. And we had a very tight window that we had to shoot this movie and due to a tax incentive. That tax incentive, it was expiring. And so we had to make that happen. Just as about we were going into pre-production, the strikes happened. And so we had it ready and set, the strikes happened, and everything got canceled, everything got shut down. And so I would show up to SAG offices pleading my case every single day for weeks and trying to get a waiver to shoot this movie. I'm like, this is my chance. I'm finally ready to shoot a movie. They refused to allow it to happen. And so we missed our window. And so I had all of that movie set up with financing and some other things and ready to go. And I didn't want to lose it. So when I knew that window was closing, I went to our investor and I said, let me write something that we can shoot here in LA and that we can pull favors and get better talent and really maximize everything, our abilities of relationships, locations, and just really hunker down and do something locally. And Scott Adler, who's our lead producer and lead investor and executive producer on the film, to his credit, he just believed in me at this point. And he said, okay, let's do it. Bring me back what you got. And so I just ran and I started developing this story and script with my co-writer, Christina Denton. And it was really like, we'd started talking about how jaded we were about this business, and how difficult it was, and like the really what the price of fame itself would be, and like the price of this Hollywood dream, not just for actors, but for us as creators. And because we were so upset with like the industry itself and specifically SAG at the moment and all these different things that just they were like, oh, you're halting us, you're stopping us from doing the thing that we want. We started just formulating this like idea of this Hollywood jazz club and a noir environment and, like a cynical take on fame a little bit. And so we had that. And then I had this idea for a character, Grit Thorn. And I went to Max Martini, who's the star of the film, and I pitched him the movie and this idea and the character. And I said, I will write this for you if you say yes. Please say yes. And I literally pitched him the thing, and he was like, to his credit, was like, all right, dude, let's fucking go. Let's go. I'll do it. And so I wrote that character with him in mind, and he said yes. And then so I had then Scott, our investor, and Max, our lead actor, and Dave Meadows, who's also a former Navy SEAL and actor. And we really were the impetus of this film. And we went off to the races. And so Christina and I, we finished the script, and we started, looking at it, and the script really just was so much fun and different, like tonally. And it's a big swing for us because we're really punching outside of our weight class here. And then we started trying to get attached talent, to people. And one of the things that we really wanted to do was like use our friends and our relationships and the people that we love and are closest to, because they're so talented that might not have gotten opportunities like this normally, and bring them on board. And that we knew that we'd get buy-in that way. And so We started casting, people, and we knew Scott Adler. He knew it was close with Linda Pearl and Patrick Duffy from Dallas, and so we took the script to them and had them read it. And I was like, got into a meeting, and I was like, I just trying to start to pitch them and be like all these things, and really, and then they're like, before you even start, we love the script, yes, and so they were on early, and so we just started putting the pieces in place for all of these things. And then one of the other things we did is like we wrote all of the music is original in this movie, and so except for one song at the end. And so early it was, I'm a musician myself too. And so like music is such a huge part of my storytelling. And so I approached my composer, Nick Gomez, very early and said, here's what we're doing. The world is, a Hollywood jazz club. This is your wheelhouse. So he started writing music and writing score and things early on. And then we brought on two other songwriters, John Gus and Sarah Cardenas. And we all like started spitting ideas around for this, the script. And so early we were working on the script and the music at the same time. And it just all kind of came together. So it's a wild, wild ride. But that's kind of how everything started to formulate.
I love it. So thinking to a couple of questions, one on the creative side and one more on the production side. And obviously there's integration there, right? Especially as a writer, director, producer, right? Like it's all the same for you. So on the creative side, thinking about, like you said, there's nothing original, about this in terms of story structure. I think a lot of times we get obsessed with like being original and making something original, when in reality, originality is the basics executed really, really well, right? And like that's what brings the interest. And then the other piece is, let's work with all of our friends and all of the people that we know and the people that they know, because we know that we're going to be in this together, kind of doing it. So for you, and you talked about you wanted to make something on the East Coast, but the way for you to do this was to kind of hyper localize and think about something that you actually could pull off under the circumstances. Like, how did you navigate all of those things? Not like how did they come together, but how did you, as the creative and production lead on this project, like how did you navigate bringing all of those elements together to actually get something made, instead of just saying, I've got this great idea and I can attach an actor and it can be in development hell for 5 years. Like, I want to make something. How'd you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the first and foremost is that it was truly the first time that I ever, if I'm being real honest with myself, it was truly the first time that I ever, like, from the moment I started putting, letters on the keyboard, that I was like, I'm going to make this. And there was no like, oh, I hope I'm going to make this. It was, this is happening. And so like that mindset to start, and just everything I did from moment one of like, I'm doing this no matter what. And it started happening. And so like, really like just setting the tone of like, this is happening. How do we start to do it? And approaching it like it is happening. And so early on, I was like, this is happening. Max, are you on board? I'm doing this. Are you going to do it with me or not? And then boom, Linda, Patrick Duffy, do you like this? I'm doing it. But like, as you start to get that ball rolling a little bit, it's amazing what happens when that train leaves the station. Right. And so that I would say is the biggest thing, was like the intent with actual real gumption behind it, not feigned fake, or I hope it was, this is happening. And so that was the biggest thing. And then also, I mean, you need money like on these things. And so, I had early on, I had our first investor, and he committed that first money in, and that was Scott Adler. And then the moment we had first money, it was real. And so we could pay talent, we could escrow funds, we could do the things that you have to do in order to actually get the project off the ground. And then from then on, like the actual production side of it is something I've been doing now for 10 plus years, right? On the, the commercial or like small television stuff that I've been doing, it's just doing it at a scale that it takes a lot longer to do it. On the movie side. And so, I've developed the skill set of production, and my company and the people we work with, we can execute it. So I knew that wasn't going to be the case. It was always just getting the first push and getting the ball rolling. And now for me at this point, it's like learning the aftermath of the business, okay, now we have the movie, we have the asset, like how do we actually make our money back? How do we, really monetize it and get it out to as many eyeballs and have people watch it and hopefully they enjoy it. But so now it's like, I'm still learning because it's the first time I've done it.
Are you going to do it again?
Yeah, dude, as hard and crazy and difficult as it was, like I still, like I'm already being like, I'm trying to have patience to see how this plays out so I can learn and do it better the next time. But I'm already itching and ready to go for the next one. And
going from short form, mid form content, even if it's at a high op tempo, right, a high clip in your career previous, like that still is a big jump. I've been on a few feature sets and series sets as an AD or UPM, associate producer type roles. I've, directed, EP'd commercials and campaigns and things like that. So I haven't been on both sets in the same capacity, but I have been on feature sets and worked on those kinds of things. As a director who went from, I'm doing a 30-second spot where I get multiple rounds of review really quickly and I get to see the work come to fruition pretty quickly and then move on to the next one. What did you experience any fatigue on that front going through the feature process here? And was there any sort of, fatigue, I guess is the word, or like, what were the challenges that you experienced and how did you navigate them on that front? Is that a clear question?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's as the director, like literally everything kind of falls in your lap, right? You drive the ship and you are the storyteller of these things. And so, everything from making your day, getting everything you need in a day, because, at indie film level, like we can't go overtime. We can't do any of these things that you have the luxury of a studio backing you and like you are so tight on schedule and everything. And so when things go wrong, and they do, and they will, it's about like, how do you adapt to the problem? And then how do you like figure out a solution to solve it? And so we had so many issues on this project, which is like, we're shooting in LA, which is not easy to shoot in LA, especially at our budget level, which is, small. And because everybody's used to like these big, huge studio projects, everything from permitting to union issues to like weather, like during the time we were filming out here, like we had this just wash and wave of giant thunderstorms coming into Los Angeles, which is not normal. Right. And so, it ended up being great for us because it really helped, showcase the mood of the film in certain ways. And that was fun. But, trying to figure out, there's places that we just couldn't shoot. We found out the night before, hey, it's about to downpour tomorrow. What do we do? And we can't shoot here, during that time. So I generally, the biggest problems, that we dealt with on this was, like, it was just like the copious amounts of small problems adding on top of each other to become one big problem, and so like that was probably the biggest issue that we had. And luckily I just have so many amazing people and crew folks and a production team around us, like, Brian Eliason and Justin Folger, who are like the producers on the ground, really driving the ship, on the production side. Like they just are so amazing, and two of my best friends from my entire life. So that we've been doing this together. So, without them, I couldn't have done it. And, but yeah, and then plus, talent things and all of those fun stuff that you have to deal with. But I will say is like, so I started with commercials, and then I would do short films, yep. And I did a couple short films, and then I was like, okay, I get the short film thing. Let's, then I tried to like push it up, like level up. And I did like we did a really high end television pilot that we were pitching around town right as the strikes happened, right before the strikes happened too. And so, but like all of those things allowed my skill set to grow and learn and be able to get to a point. Like, had I not done that TV pilot, this movie wouldn't have been as good as it is. Right. And that TV pilot was a 44-minute pilot. And that was like a really great, test practice swing for me, really. And to like kind of be and see what works and what doesn't, because there's a lot of things, that we talk about, like your taste and your skill set and developing that taste. A lot of things like look good on paper but just don't translate to the screen. And so being able to learn and differentiate that as a director is paramount. And so there was a lot of those moments in our pilot that we did that like were really funny or really great or looked fantastic on paper. And then when we got it, didn't quite work. And so I took those lessons and were able to like really implant them into this filmmaking process of Hollywood Grit. And that really helped me exponentially.
I love it. I'll definitely have you back. I want to be respectful of your time here on the press tour. Before I ask the open-ended question at the end of each episode, where can folks find you? Where can folks find the film? Where do you want to drive traffic? How can folks get out there and support?
Yeah, so you can go to hollywoodgrit.com. That's our website. On the website, you can find, what theaters we're playing in, what markets we're playing in, and we'll do the continual updates of where to find us as, we go down the road here. And then we'll be on Apple, Amazon, TVOD here, I think in about 6 weeks after our theatrical run. And you can find me on my social. Instagram is probably the best, but at Ryan32Curtis.
Awesome. I love it. And then you employed several veterans on this film, right? I would be remiss to not mention that.
Yeah. So it's really, really important for me, just generally, because one, I love to work with veterans, just because like we have such a similar mentality. We're going to get the job done. Smart, good head on the shoulders. And that I can just generally say that across the board. And so we employed on our movie over 50 veterans in front and behind of the camera. And so, they are just an integral part of who we are as a company and creatives. And it's really just important for me not to just do it, not to just like talk the talk, but to actually walk the walk and hire folks and be able to develop talent underneath us, for both in front of and behind the camera. And so it's really important for every project, not just this one, for me to hire as many veterans as I can.
Yeah, I love it. For those that aren't connected to VME that want to get into the industry or are in the industry, get connected with VME and get on board some of these projects. Ryan, to end each episode of the podcast, I ask an open-ended question. What's on your heart and your mind for our community right now? Could be a piece of advice, something you want to get off your chest, or something you want to reiterate that we've talked about today. Ryan, what's on your heart? What's on your mind?
I was just listening to, actually Tom Brady talk and make a talk about failing. And it really just kind of resonated in me just for myself and the community and stuff like this is that, for me and for the people who are chasing these story dreams or whatever it is that you are doing, like you have to be willing to fail on the biggest stage, because if you're not willing to fail on the biggest stage, you'll never get there. And so for me, it's allowing myself the slack to fail on a very public stage, and hope obviously that's not the case, but knowing that if it does happen, I'm here and I'll get up again and I'll continue to try. And so I think that that's really important just for everybody in this creative space specifically, because art is hard. And, the only way to get better is to fail and do it again. And so, I think I'll take that with me, and hopefully people can take some of that themselves.
I love it. Well said, brother. Ryan, appreciate your time. Appreciate your energy. Appreciate the movie. Can't wait to watch it.
Thanks, brother.
All right, man. I'll see you.
Yeah.